CJ himself, obviously ball security, making good decisions, throwing the football with accuracy, all those kind of things are the kind of things that CJ is going to have to go back to the drawing board and really get into the film room and figure out why it was maybe that he took some chances with the football that he didn't need to. What does he have to do as far as making sure that the ball's coming out on time, that he's protecting the ball better in the pocket, and then, as a team, and as a front office, they got to make sure that this offensive line is straight. Look, they were 32nd in the NFL in run block win rate. That's just not, you just can't win that way. You cannot win with your offensive line being that inept. And they were bottom quarter in the league in pass block win rate. So you know that pass rush being under pressure is something that is going to unsettle even the best of quarterbacks. So I think that's first and foremost. On the defensive side, I think they need to continue to make a strong unit even stronger. They're going to need some depth on the inside. They're fine on the outside, obviously, with Daniil and Will. And between CJ and Will together, they absolutely set the table for this franchise and turned things around back in 2003 when they were drafted number 2 and number 3. And it's great that they're exercising their fifth-year options. These guys are foundational players. But I think in this case of CJ, he has to go back to the drawing board and make sure that protecting the football is priority number one and not to repeat the mistakes that he did in 2025.
Man, and Booger, you're joining us just in time for this discussion. Really, when you talk about Houston's offensive line issues, these are going back not to last season, but also the season before. They tried to retool it last season. What are you seeing from these Texans that they need to get over this playoff hump?
Well, when you talk about retooling, I don't know if they did a good enough job when you trade away Larry Tunsil, one of the best left tackles in football as far as protecting the passer. This is a huge season coming up for the Houston Texans. I agree with Lewis on Will Anderson. I think he's a foundational piece. I think him and Daniil Hunter make one of the more formidable defensive end combinations in football. But the fact that you pick up the fifth-year option in your quarterback and you don't extend him, which, by the way, is not cost intuitive for the team, lets you know that they're not necessarily sold on C.J. Stroud. Because if they were sold on him, you go ahead and extend him now and you go ahead and get this deal done. I think the last 2 years of C.J. Stroud, if we really want to be honest, guys, he's regressed. They have to see him play more consistent football. Rookie year was absolutely outstanding, but I need to see more like the rookie year and less like the last 2 years. If you can do that, then this team starts to take the steps that we thought they could take last year, which is when you get into the playoffs, they had the best defense in football.
Right.
The best defense in football, and they didn't get the job done because the quarterback threw the football to the other team so many times. So I expect them to extend.
The Houston Texans have a problem, and it is not a small problem. It is not a maybe we will figure it out in training camp problem. It is a right now, in plain sight, everybody sees it, nobody wants to say it out loud problem. The Texans just exercised the fifth-year options for C.J. Stroud and Will Anderson. That sounds like good news. That sounds like a franchise locking up its core. But Booger McFarland just said something on NFL Live that stopped me cold. He said the fact that you pick up the fifth-year option on your quarterback and you do not extend him, which by the way is not cost-intuitive for the team, lets you know that they are not necessarily sold on C.J. Stroud. Because if they were sold on him, you go ahead and extend him now. You get the deal done. Think about that. The Texans traded away Larry Tunsil, one of the best left tackles in football when it comes to protecting the passer. They have lost 3 straight divisional round games under DeMeco Ryans. And C.J. Stroud last season had 5 fumbles against the Steelers and 4 first-half picks against the Patriots. It was an absolute disaster. Louis Riddick broke it down perfectly. He said ball security, making good decisions, accuracy, all those things are what CJ has to go back to the drawing board on. He has to figure out why he took chances with the football that he did not need to take. But here is the real issue. The offensive line was 32nd in the NFL in run block win rate. 32nd. You cannot win that way. You cannot win with your offensive line being that inept. They were bottom quarter in the league in pass block win rate. So even the best quarterbacks get unsettled when they are under constant pressure. And C.J. Stroud has regressed. Booger said it directly. He said the last 2 years of C.J. Stroud, if we really want to be honest, he has regressed. Rookie year was absolutely outstanding, but I need to see more like the rookie year and less like the last 2 years. And here is the part that should terrify Texans fans. The Texans had the best defense in football last year. The best defense. And they still did not get the job done because the quarterback threw the football to the other team so many times. So now what? They are going to extend Will Anderson. That is happening. Will Anderson is a premier player at a premier position for a premier defense. He is a major priority. Jeremy Fowler said the market for edge rushers with Micah Parsons and those guys is well above $45 million a year. Will Anderson might not get there, but he is getting a really strong number. Meanwhile, CJ Stroud is in a prove-it year. A prove-it year. For a guy who was the number 2 overall pick. For a guy who looked like a future MVP as a rookie. Now he has to prove that he is the true franchise quarterback or the Texans need to move on. That is not where you want to be entering year 4. The Texans tried to retool the offensive line. They traded for David Montgomery. There. Work things. But Booger is not sure they did a good enough job, especially after trading away Tunsil. And Louis Riddick made the most important point of the entire segment. He said between CJ and Will together, they absolutely set the table for this franchise and turned things around back in 2023 when they were drafted number 2 and number 3. It is great that they are exercising their 5th-year options. These guys are foundational players. But in the case of CJ, he has to go back to the drawing board and make sure protecting the football is priority number 1. He cannot repeat the mistakes of 2025. So here is the reality. The Texans are not all in on CJ Stroud. If they were, they would have extended him already. They would have given him the mega deal. Instead, they are waiting. They are watching. They are making him earn it. And that is a huge red flag. Because if your own front office is not sure about you after 3 years as a starter, what does that say to the rest of the league? What does that say to the locker room? What does that say to the free agents you are trying to attract? CJ Stroud has all the talent in the world. He has the arm. He has the poise. But talent does not matter if you turn the ball over in the playoffs. Talent does not matter if you cannot stay consistent. And the Texans are running out of patience. This is a huge season coming up for the Houston Texans. Not just for the team, but for CJ Stroud personally. If he plays like his rookie year, he gets $250 million. If he plays like the last 2 years, the Texans might be looking for a new quarterback in 2027. That is the pressure. That is the reality. So here is my question for you. Do the Texans extend CJ Stroud after the season, or do they move on and start over? Drop your take in the comments. Do you agree with Booger McFarland, or do you think the Texans are right to wait? And if you want more honest breakdowns of what is really happening in the NFL this offseason, hit that subscribe button. Thanks for watching. See you in the next one.